Jeremiah 29:13. Look at this passage with me. You will seek me and find me when you seek me with all your heart. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Seek Week. Yeah, we have to applaud right there. Welcome to Seek Week. We've been so looking forward to this because, man, the idea of corporately, proactively running after God and doing it together. And it's not just for our own individual souls that we're doing Soul Week. It's not just about us personally, but it's about our families. There's something powerful about seeking God and praying for God. Something powerful happens even in those people's lives around us. Praying people make impact into every room that they walk into and the relationships that they have. So this is about your children and your family and your friends and your neighbors, not just your own personal soul. And what we have lived through the last couple of years, heck, what we've lived through the last week, what's happening in the world, it's obvious the world is broken. Anyone would agree with that. Everyone would be like, man, the world is broken, and people have tried to fix so many problems, and it's helped a bit. But a true renewal, a lasting renewal, comes only with the Spirit. It comes only by the Spirit. So please track with me here this morning. In the Old Testament, God he gathered a family. He picked a family and he said, I want you to represent me in the world. I want you to be salt and light. I want you to love the people around you. I want you to love the people of the world, and I want you to bring them back to me, their true Father. And this people, they called themselves Israel. And so Israel's calling was to love the nations around them and to invite them back to God. But they didn't do such a great job. In fact, they started to look more like the nations around them than their own God. They started to worship other gods. They even turned their back on their Creator God in rebellion. And this left them without any protection. They became vulnerable. There was no wisdom. And other nations started to seize upon them and attack them. One of those nations is Babylon. We had studied Babylon in our series that we just finished in the spring on the book of Daniel. But what ends up happening is Babylon sacks Israel, enslaves them, captures them, and takes them into captivity. And so now Israel is living in a foreign land. And they are there enslaved for over 70 years. And over that time, they start to get a hunger and a heart for God again. They start seeking Him, and it's led by just a few. One of them is a man by the name of Daniel. Another one by the name of Zechariah. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Just a few start seeking God, and this starts to spread. And the people come back to their God. And eventually, Babylon actually miraculously, you got to think, this is like the Middle East. This is like Afghanistan kind of thing. This is like, could this really happen? Babylon is so powerful. They literally let Israel go back home and rebuild their nation. It's crazy. Now, there's this prophet by the name of Zechariah, and he's just been seeking God. All right, we're getting ready to go back. We're going to rebuild. We're going to start with the capital city, Jerusalem. We're going to start there. And he is a descendant of King David. And he's going to go back as the governor of Jerusalem. And his main task is this: we got to rebuild the temple. That's his main task. And so a prophet living at this time by the name of Zechariah, this guy tells this guy who's a descendant of David, Zerubbabel, who's going to be the governor, listen, God's given me a word for you. And in Zechariah chapter 4, verse 6, this is the word. Zechariah says, God said to me, this is the word of the Lord to Zerubbabel, who's getting ready to go do this amazing thing, rebuilding the temple in Jerusalem after being enslaved for 70 years. And he says this, not by might, nor by power, but by my spirit, says the Lord Almighty. So he was told, Zerubbabel is told, that God wants to do a work. God is like desperate to do a work. He's longing to actually do an amazing thing, but it's not going to be through the might of some military kind of conquest thing. It's not going to be through power, only by his spirit. What will bring change isn't might, but it will come through those who are courageous enough to surrender to God's spirit. Have your way. This isn't passivity. It's total engagement with the mind and the heart of God. This is courageous living. And this is super relevant for us today. See, God is longing to do a work in the world. He's longing to use those who are passionate enough to actually step in line, get in line with what he is longing to do. What is his heart for the world? Those who are courageous enough to wait on him and go, I'm not moving till you show up. And they plead for the land. See, revival happens when just a few seek him. And that's amazing. If you actually look historically at major revivals where not just thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of people come to faith, it starts with just a few. And revival is a cultural phenomenon. It's not just a church thing. Revivals are massive movements. It would be like this. The youth group goes to camp. God does an amazing thing in those kids' lives. They come back here, and all of a sudden, a whole school is saved. And then another school. And then those families. And then churches all over the city. They can't hold the people. They're starting services every day of the week because of what's happening. This is a revival. And the world is actually desperate for us. There was a revival in the 1700s. It's an amazing thing. In the 1700s in the U.S., which was the East Coast, basically what was happening was massive crime, divorce rate was high, alcoholism was rampant, and crime was out of control. A few people start praying in Manhattan. 3 men, young men in their 20s. God, you got to do something. And that little prayer meeting grew. And it grew to the point where at noon every day, they would have this little prayer meeting. Every church in Manhattan, within a few months, was filled at noon to capacity, overflowing. There's newspaper articles about this. You can actually go Google this. And it swept up and down the East Coast. I said crime was at an all-time high. Out of control, crime evaporated. When the Spirit of God moves, it impacts social structures. The cops had nothing to do. I wish some of our cop friends were here this morning. I'm not seeing any of our cop friends. Look, the police department started singing groups, quartets, because they just wanted to fill their time, and they would travel to different communities and sing because they were so bored. There was nothing for them to do. Now, the last revival in the U.S. was in the 1970s, and it was called the Jesus Movement. Have you heard of the Jesus Movement? Some of you lived through the Jesus movement. I bet many of you gave your lives to Jesus during the Jesus movement in this room. I was born in the heart of the Jesus movement. My parents started a Christian rock band called The Amplified Version. This is how sick my mom is. I was born in the morning, and that night she did a rock show. How rad is she? Women, can you imagine that? That's commitment. She had an afro this big. The band was called The Oh, that's her on the right. That's her. She's beautiful. They traveled. For the first 10 years of my life, I grew up in a tour bus traveling all over the country during the Jesus movement, and they would sing songs about Jesus, and it was massive. They made 5 records. Millions of young people, millions of teenagers came to faith in the 70s during the Jesus movement. But that movement started with just a few praying, just a desperate few. Man, if a revival were to happen again, may it start with us. To understand the Jesus movement, do we have any history buffs in here? History buffs? All right, me and you. All right, here we go. History buffs. To understand the Jesus movement, you got to do a little history because you got to go back actually to World War II. Japan bombs Pearl Harbor in 1940, and what ends up happening, what did I say? Yeah, 41, thank you. December of 1941. And massive young men enlist. Dude, it was so huge. Actors, Hollywood actors, musicians were enlisting. This is why they call it our greatest generation. And it was a just war. And they were fighting to rid the world of evil and hatred, bigotry and racism, dominance. And many gave their lives for this cause. In 1945, the war ends and they come home. What happens? A baby boom. A baby boom happens. All of these kids, more kids than the U.S. has ever had. So many kids, they didn't know what to do with all the kids. 5 million more children enter kindergarten in 1950 than the U.S. has ever had before. 5 million. That's called a baby boom, my friends. We have a picture of, this is one of the first classes. Look how cute they are. Oh my gosh. Insane. This is actually where, across the nation, they moved holistically all the way across the nation from a one-room schoolhouse with multiple grades to individual grades. All over the country, they had to do this because of all the children. Now, here's the thing about these kids, is they weren't doing very well. Their dads came home, undiagnosed PTSD, saw horrific things. And the families started to really struggle. This is actually documented. When these kids grew up to be teenagers in the later 1950s, what ended up happening was they started dropping out of school and they started rebelling en masse. So much so that newspapers around the country and news organizations started calling these kids who are now teenagers the beat down generation. They've been beat up and they've been beat down. They've been ignored. They're struggling. They're dropping out. They're the beat down generation. Now, there was at the time this artist named Jack Kerouac. Jack Kerouac was an amazing artist, very famous. And teenagers, kids, young people loved Jack Kerouac, and Jack Kerouac loved Jesus, and he had a heart for these kids. And on national TV, it's a famous artist. He gets up and he says this. He says, this is not a beat down generation. He takes this label that the media has put on these kids and he redeems it. He flips it. And he says, this is not a beat down generation. They're difference makers. And they will be known as beatniks. He changes the name. You're like, what's a beatnik? If you ever Google later the TV show Dobie Gillis, and you'll see what a beatnik is. They will be called beatniks, fully embracing Jesus in his beatitudes. That's insane. National TV, kids everywhere are listening and open to it. You know what the beatitudes are? We studied them not long ago. This summer we looked at them. Matthew 5. Blessed are those who mourn. These kids had mourned. They will be comforted. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, they will see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. And Jack Kerouac and his best friend, Allen Ginsberg, who didn't even believe in God, start traveling around the country to major cities. We have a picture of Allen and all these kids, all these young people leaning in, and they are teaching these young people all over the country how to live the way of Jesus, how to be peacemakers, how to be children of mercy, and what that looks like. Now, what ends up happening is the beatniks, known for the Beatitudes, forget. And in fact, like Israel, they reject their name. They reject their God, and they turn away, and they stop calling themselves the beatniks, and they start calling themselves the hipsters. The beatniks become the hipsters. You got to think early Beatles. Then the hipsters changed their name again a couple years later in the mid-'60s, and they start calling themselves the hippies. And that's mostly what people think of when they think of the 60s and the 70s. We got to get a new mic, Mark. This is killing me. This thing. No, I'm good. So the hipsters become the hippies, and what ends up happening is crisis. Are you still with me? Is this boring? Heck no. This is awesome. Crisis hits. Jack Kerouac, who started this whole movement, who reached the young people all around the country, ends up dying of alcoholism. Their heroes start dying of heroin overdoses. They reject true love, God's love, with a lesser form of free love, embracing all kinds of horrible things, and it leads them into crisis. And they see it. There's riots on the streets. Horrible things are happening. Many young people, young men, are at war again in Vietnam. The civil rights movement is in full effect, and it feels kind of like what we've been feeling the last couple of years. Like, man, it feels like the world is so broken, everyone can feel it. But it was ripe. The crisis created this wide openness to, man, what has happened? And the nation went, we need God. Just like the people in captivity in Babylon, they were like, man, we forgot our first love. We forgot our true calling. So the Jesus movement was birthed in the early 70s. It was so huge that even Life magazine and different publications were documenting what was happening. because it was happening all over the country. And my parents' band, the Amplified Version, starts singing, traveling, touring all over the place. They have a top 10 hit on secular radio, gets up to number 7. They're a one-hit wonder. Ike and Tina Turner asked them to come on tour with them. They're huge. And every week as a little boy, I am seeing thousands of kids come to Jesus. Dude, it ruined me. It ruined me. I have the hardest time sitting here every Sunday. I struggle with church. I want more. God, do more. I have this hunger in me that goes back to my early childhood. Billy Graham has these massive revivals, filling up football stadiums, arenas. He sees my parents. They're singing about Jesus. They're on the radio. Kids love them. He's like, will you come on tour with me on my revivals? So for 3 years, my parents' band do youth night. They're filling up entire football stadiums. Thousands and thousands of teenagers coming to hear them. And then Billy Graham gets up to preach. Kids falling in love with Jesus. It was all over the country. There's a small community in Alabama. It's actually, a movie was made about how amazing this was, but it was happening. This was like what happened everywhere. A movie called Woodlawn came out a few years ago. Here, it's based on a true story about this time. This is just one little community, but it was happening all over the country. In this movie, again, true story, here's what happened. Youth for Christ guy goes and he starts ministering at a local high school. The entire football team gets saved. Then all the cheerleaders. Then they start doing prayer meetings. Hundreds, now thousands. And this guy's overwhelmed. He calls my dad up. Hey, Paul, can you come and just sing for this? Like, I have almost this whole school just got saved. Could you come and sing and minister to the kids? My dad's like, dude, yes, we'll be there. So all these hippies in this band get in a bus. We drive to Alabama. We do one show. My parents' band, one show. The Spirit of God was so powerful. They were like, we can't leave. They stayed there for 30 days, did 30 shows. Every high school in the region, outside the county, multiple counties are coming. Thousands upon thousands of kids are giving their lives to Jesus. It's in this movie. Insane. And I'm thinking, like, what was it? Like, what was the turning point? What caused this? Because, God is always wanting to move. What was it? And I think it boils down to this word. There was a national sense of desperation. We can't fix this. We're so divided. No matter what we do, it seems to get worse. God, help us. Desperation. We need you. When the people, during the time of Zechariah, got to a point where they were just like, we can't get out of this. We walked away from our God. How did we do that? And they had this overwhelming sense, like, God, can we just sense your presence? Will you just do a work? But God reminds them, yes, I'll do it. I'll show up. I'll do a work. But it won't come through military might. It's not going to come through your own muscle or your own power, through blunt force, forcing people to change their minds. Renewal will only come out of the work of the Spirit. That's it. Not by might, nor by power, but by my Spirit, says the Lord Almighty. As a staff, I've been here a year this month. I'm still new. Some of you are new to our church, and you're like, wow, I'm new and I don't really know anyone. Guess what? I'm with you. I don't know anyone either. still getting to know people. And I love it. I love that I'm here. And as a staff, over this year, we've just been sensing, man, we sense God wants to work. May you begin with us. Do work in us. Unify us. Soften our hearts. Open our minds. Give us your words. And it begs the question then, are we as a group connected to a spirit? Are we wide open to his will? Are we ready to turn from the things that have been gripping our lives, the sin that so entangles us? Are we ready to seek him with all of our hearts? And again, many, not just us, are getting the sense that God is wanting to move. And boy, do we need him to. This week at the bridge is Seek Week. And we just kind of feel like we got to ante up. We got to put the pedal to the metal. We got to run after God, and we got to do it together. Can we just do it together? I actually believe that the world is desperate for God's people to pray, to seek him. And the world is ripe, ready for the church to wake up to his spirit and to be deeply connected to the heart of God. So this morning is like a pep rally. We're getting ready for the big game. This is a pep rally. So on your chair is a flyer. I want you to pull it out. It says Seek Week, and it says what each day we're doing. Let me walk you through this. Day 1, check. We're here. We did it. Sweet. Already one down. Can you believe it? Tomorrow, prayer walk. Every one of us in our own neighborhoods are going to walk the neighborhood and pray over our neighbors. Just quietly. You'll be walking by. Hey, Brock. Hey, how you doing? God, I just pray for that person right there. God, do a work. Whatever, you're just going to walk the neighborhood. Some of you are like, I don't know really how to pray. So I'm with you. Sometimes I don't know what to say. And so last night, actually yesterday afternoon, I was here. I was praying in this room. Then last night, I went for a prayer walk by myself. I was kind of prayed out, but I just felt like I needed to. And so I just kind of walked, and I just was like, Jesus, 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 Jesus. There's just something powerful about speaking his name over our neighborhood. Write this down. This will help you when you do a prayer walk tomorrow. There's an app you can download, and it will guide you through a 10-minute time of prayer. You're like, I don't know what to do. Download the app, put your headphones on, and listen. It's called, what is it called? Lectio 365. Lectio, Lectio 365. I listen to it every day. I love it. And they're British. They're very nice to listen to. So we're going to prayer walk day 2. Day 3, we're going to fast from a meal. I need that anyways. Day 4, we're going to all come back together. In here, Wednesday, worship and prayer night. You got to be here. We got to pack this place. You got to bring your children. We're going to be praying over your children. We're going to be praying over your teenagers. We're going to be praying over you. God is going to do an amazing thing. Come Wednesday night expectant, and it's for everyone. Be here, 6:30, Wednesday, in this room. We're going to fast from social media, day 5. This will be the hardest for some of us. Friday, we're doing the back-to-school bash. Did you know that the band we booked are a bunch of kids or teenagers called The Color of Sound? They just played the Irvine Spectrum Center. They're like a professional band. and they're amazing. And all they play are oldies. They're incredible. It's going to be so much fun. That's Friday. You got to make sure you're there. You invite as many people as you can. Day 7, we're prayer walk, and then Sunday, we're back here for our bilingual service at 10 a.m. to kick off our fall and so many things that we're doing. God is on the move. I want to end our time this morning by seeking him. So this is what I want you to do. I'm going to invite the band up. I'm going to pull this back. I want you to get comfortable. If you've got your phone, a Bible, I want you to get it off your lap, put it away. I just want you to get comfortable in your seat. And we're going to do a prayer exercise. And so right now, right where you're at, I'm going to say a line, and then you're going to repeat it back to me. I'm going to say, we're going to put our hands in the middle of our chest like this. I'm going to say, Christ be in my life and in my living. And you'll just say it out loud, Christ be in my life and in my living. Up to our heart, Christ be in my heart and in my loving. Christ be in my mouth and in my talking. Christ be in my eyes and in my seeing. Christ be in my ears and in my hearing. Christ be in my mind and in my thinking. So we're just going to do this prayer. Now, when you do spiritual exercises, you need to go in knowing a couple of things. It's not really about what you experience. Some of you are going to sense God's presence, and some of you are not. There are not winners or losers here. This is just us saying, Christ, be the center of every area of my life. I seek you now. Does that make sense? It's a declaration. You are my God. There's no one else. So let's just close our eyes, take in a deep breath, and let's just center ourselves on Jesus. Let's put our hands in the middle of our chest right here, our stomach representing our life. Just keep your eyes closed. And I just want you all together out loud. Repeat after me. Make it your own prayer. Christ be in my life and in my living. Christ be in my life and in my living. Go up to your heart. Christ be in my heart and in my loving. Christ be in my heart and in my loving. To your mouth. Christ be in my mouth and in my speaking. Christ be in my mouth and in my speaking. To your eyes. Christ be in my eyes and in my seeing. Christ be in my eyes and in my seeing. To your ears. Christ be in my ears and in my listening. Christ be in my ears and in my listening. To your mind. Christ be in my mind and in my thinking. Christ be in my mind and in my thinking. Okay, back down to our life. This time, I don't want you to repeat after me. You'll just quietly move your hands through the different places, and under your breath, give him that area of your life. Okay? So we'll move our hands, but we won't repeat the prayer. So everyone, our hands in the middle of our chest here, representing our life. Don't repeat after me. Just say your own prayer under your breath. Christ be in my life and in my living. Be in my life and in my living. Christ be in my heart and in my loving. Christ be in my mouth and in my speaking. the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart be acceptable in your sight, O Lord, my strength and my Redeemer. To our eyes, Christ be in my eyes and in my seeing. Give him your eyes. To our ears, Christ be in my ears and in my hearing. To our minds, Christ be in my mind and in my thinking. I just want you to go back to the different places. Some of you, you've been plagued with thoughts of anxiety and worry and fear. Just stay on your mind. Others of you have been listening to voices that are troubling you. You've been listening to the voice of the imposter that is making you riddled with insecurity and fear. Others of you, it's your mouth. Give him your mouth. Move to your mouth. God, I give you my mouth. Some of you are in relationships with people that are hard to love. Go to your heart. Jesus, I give you my heart. Help me to love the way you love. Just go to the different places. Move to the different places with your hands and give him those areas of your life. I give you my thoughts. I give you my eyes and what I look at. I give you my ears. I give you my mouth. God, do a work.